Hello, everybody. Greetings, book lovers everywhere, and welcome to E-Train Talks. I'm your host, E-Train. I'm a literacy advocate, podcast host, and the founder of E-Train Talks, Inc., a 501c3 charitable nonprofit. And everybody, I am so excited you're here because I have a very special guest joining me. In today's podcast, we are stepping into the suspenseful and captivating world of middle grade horror and mysteries. Who better to talk to than the #1 New York Times and USA Today best-selling author, Lindsay Currie. Welcome to E-Train Talks, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. This is a tremendous honor. I'm really excited to get to chat with you today.
I'm so excited that you're here as well. I'm thrilled. And, before reading your books, I wasn't a big horror or spooky book fan, but now it's one of my favorite genres. So, folks, before we get into the questions, a little bit about Lindsay and her stories. She keeps middle grade readers, myself included, on the edge of their seats with spooky, eerie, and heartfelt tales like The Girl in White, What Lives in the Woods, and her incredible Mystery of Locked Rooms, as well as the book right here, one of her newest, It's Watching. Lindsay has mastered the art of blending suspense, history, emotion, all with a dash of ghostly fun. Ghosts, ghouls, the whole works. So, I am so excited for us to get a chance to uncover some of the secrets. Locked rooms, secrets. Behind Lindsay's incredible
Good
stories.
connection.
Behind Lindsay's incredible storytelling, because there's so much to unpack. So let's dive right in. First off, as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't a huge fan of spooky books, and I'd read maybe a handful of middle grade books from the genre before diving into your stories. And when it comes to your writing, one feature really stood out to me. I just love how readers truly feel like they are right there with the characters, trying to solve the mysteries, whether horror themed or not. A lot of books kind of just tell you what's happening, but we get a chance to experience the whole eerie, I guess, aura or vibe, and just kind of be right there with the characters. It's like, oh, hey there. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Hazel. So, are you a fan of puzzles yourself? That's my question. And if so, do you prefer word puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, or other kinds?
Ooh, this is such a fun question. Well, first of all, thank you for the compliments on feeling like you're there with my characters. That's obviously a big goal of mine as a writer. And I have to say that when I was your age, I was a huge reader primarily because my family really didn't take a lot of trips or do a lot of exploring. Most of our time was spent within our city limits, actually. And I had a great childhood, but I was a very curious kid, right? And I wanted to explore other people and places and cultures. And the way I did that was through reading. So it was very important to me as a kid that those books be very immersive. And I feel like I was there with those characters because then I kind of felt like I was getting out of my city limits and experiencing those things for real. So it means a lot to me that you said that. Thank you very much. And as for your question about puzzles, yes, I like puzzles. So not, I guess I should clarify here. Okay. So not just standard like puzzles, right? Where you're putting pieces in, but I really like riddles and I
Yeah,
like ciphers. I love things like that. And I especially love escape rooms. And the escape rooms are so fun because they are blending a lot of those things together, right? You may be hunting and looking for clues that are physical. You may be looking at a clue that seems to make no sense whatsoever because you have to decode it. And then you've got an element of time as well, where you
right.
kind of got to move quick, right? And work as a team, usually with other people. I love that kind of vibe and that atmosphere. So in that particular scenario, yes, I love puzzles and riddles and all of those things.
Yeah, I love them as well. And I mean, talking about escape rooms, perfect segue because now let's talk about the mystery of locked rooms. So,
Mhm.
your protagonists, Sarah and her friends, tackle a series of tricky riddles, puzzles, escape rooms, the whole works. And it's all inside of an old mansion. How about that? It already sounds like all of you watching are super captivated, but there's more. So, I guess my question for you is what inspired the idea of an escape room style mystery for kids?
Great question. So, honestly, I think that the seeds for the book, The Mystery of Locked Rooms, were kind of planted in my brain a long time ago because when my kids were younger, my kids are all college age and older now, but when they were younger, especially on a day like today where it's really hot, in the summer, we were always looking for something fun to do that was air conditioned. So we got on this kind of like period of time where we were doing a bunch of different escape rooms. We did like a Wild West themed one. We did an art heist. We did like a zombie invasion one. We did all kinds of escape rooms. And I really thought that they were so fun, not because I was good at them. Confession, I'm actually not good at escape rooms. Liking them and being good at them are two very different things. So I'm not great at them, but I do really enjoy them. And what I enjoyed the most was watching my kids in the escape room, because my kids are very, very different. They have different personalities, they have different strengths, they have different interests. But together in that room, they seem to use their strengths to kind of lift each other up, right? And to solve puzzles and to do things in a way that I just don't think I'd ever seen them do before, because that's not a real world environment, right?
Right.
Um, and it kind of made me start thinking about writing a different kind of mystery, right? By the time I wrote the mystery of locked rooms, I had already written many spooky mysteries, as you know, and I love those and I'll always want to write those. But I got thinking, what about those readers of mine who love mysteries, but maybe don't want the ghosts and the scary stuff? What about something for them? What about an adventure story that's kind of a treasure hunt? And fun fact, the treasure hunt element of the mystery of the locked rooms really kind of goes back to June of 1985 when a movie called The Goonies came out. I was 9 when The Goonies came out, and I wanted so badly to have an adventure like that. I wanted to be doing all the things those kids were doing. And so writing The Mystery of Locked Rooms, setting it in an escape house that's kind of escape room style, you know, an abandoned fun house where there is still some peril, right? There's
Right.
some danger. Nobody really knows where these kids are. Their phones don't work. It's dark. It's decrepit. The house is not in great shape. But then also having this added layer of, but there might be a treasure in it, and Sarah needs this for her family. Kind of all of those things came together and ended up giving me the opportunity to write that book. Such a fun writing adventure, honestly. West in the mystery of locked rooms, his memory is just incredible, right? And he's so good at escape rooms because he can remember routes, he can remember codes. You know, they tried, so they don't do it again. And that memory actually does come from my oldest son, Rob. He does have this incredible memory. So that little piece of him, I worked into that character. But the rest of West's character is nothing like my son. So I love to do that. I'll take bits and pieces from people and I'll put them together until it feels like a real layered person, a unique person.
That's really sweet. And you get a mix of your sons, and you also just get a mix of the unexpected and, kind of creating these characters in your mind, which is really neat. I mean, I've heard of a lot of authors
Yeah.
use like features of people that you know or you've met, and you turn them into one or multiple really sweet
Yeah.
characters. So, shifting to another one of your books
Oh,
that I have
yeah.
with
Thank
me.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Shifting to another one of the books of yours that I have with me, it's Watching. It is all about, well, I mean, I guess I'll have to ask the question then. Lindsay Currie, we'll talk about it because I don't want to give any spoilers away. So, my question for you is, one thing that I find very interesting about your writing is that you sort of blend fiction with nonfiction. Like in It's Watching, you feature the real cemetery Bachelor's Grove, which is located in your home state of Illinois. So, what prompted you to include this particular cemetery in your story, and what fascinates you about cemeteries or graveyards?
Ooh, this might be my favorite question you've asked so far. So, I love, first of all, I do love cemeteries. I love graveyards. I think that they have this bad reputation because we associate them with scary things, right? We associate them with death, and that's understandable. But also, we have to remember that graveyards and cemeteries weren't really meant for us to just be afraid of, right? When they were originally built, a lot of them, the reason they're so pretty and manicured and landscaped is because it was supposed to be welcoming. You know, you were supposed to go there for a picnic or to fish or to swim or to spend time with your family, paying respects to loved ones. So it does help to kind of think about the origins of graveyards and how they were meant to be welcoming and not scary. You know, I think everyone knows the kind of that legend of holding your breath when you're going by a graveyard. You're supposed to hold your breath. But The other cool thing about graveyards is that you can learn so much about the history of that location. You can learn about the notable people, right? Who are the pioneers, who were the early settlers, who was who in that area.
Mhm.
You can learn a lot about the architecture. What did they think was interesting at the time? What were the trends at the time? What were the people who were supposedly, very high society doing for their graves? It's super interesting to see all of those things. And then graveyards in general also carry along with them a lot of forgotten history. And in some cases, kind of twisted history, and that's what interests me the most. So the stories that get handed down, they're usually ghostly, they're usually scary, they get handed down for many generations, right? And they're really not right, or maybe it's something that nobody knows at all, but it seems so important. So with It's Watching, I ended up featuring Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, which is one of the most haunted graveyards anywhere. And part of the reason I chose it is because it's very unique. For one, it's very remote. So it's kind of in the middle of a forest preserve. So imagine you can't just drive up and park in a parking lot and then walk through Bachelor's Grove. You have to drive to a parking lot for a forest preserve and then hike through the woods.
Mm,
And about a quarter to a half mile later, you will find Bachelor's Grove in the middle of the woods. Creepy. It's kind of creepy, but it's wonderful for a book like this, right?
right.
It's also abandoned. So Bachelor's Grove hasn't had anyone buried in it since the 80s. And actually, on the inside of It's Watching, there is a map that kind of shows out of over the 100 people buried there, how few headstones, there's only like 20 some that remain, which is why when you look at the cover, you see some of them knocked down, how they're
Mhm.
cracking. A lot of them are really damaged. It's because people have abused the graveyard over the years. And there are so many ghost legends in it, and so many important people that I felt like still deserve to be remembered and highlighted, even though they have no headstone. There's no evidence of them in this graveyard. Something about that just did not sit right with me. And for all of those reasons, I decided to feature it in the book, and I'm so glad I did. It's a very special place.
Yeah, special place, really interesting detail, or attention to detail as well. And my next question is continuing with It's Watching. A lot of ghost stories discuss the experiences of kids being haunted, but your book It's Watching goes deeper than that. It discusses the reason that the ghost or the ghosts multiple call out to your protagonists. No spoilers, but your spooky themed story isn't just creepy, but it's a deep and actually meaningful read. How do you balance the scare factor in your book with heart and emotion?
Oh, well, thank you. Speaking of heart, that was a very heartfelt question. Thank you for asking that. It is something that's really important to me as a writer. I don't think you're ever going to read a Lindsay Currie book where the antagonist is or the ghost, right, is evil just to be evil. That's just not my vision for the kind of writing I want to put out in the world. Um, there is always some problem, right? There's always something that connects the ghost to my main character. There's always a journey to be taken on both sides, right? So
Right.
the ghost needs something, they're not at peace for whatever reason, and there has to be a real reason. They are targeting my main character to help them. What can my character do? What position is my character in? And what does my character need to learn from that ghost, right? Because there's always something that we can learn from every experience, even if it's a scary one. And so that journey, my character should always be in a different place at the end of the book than they started out as a result of the haunting itself, if that makes sense. So I don't want to give anything away either, but yes, there are some strong connections between the ghost and my main character and It's Watching, and that journey that they take together through the haunting is what kind of at the end of the book I think brings everything together for you and gives my character a little bit of a new perspective from what she had at the beginning of the book.
That's a great answer. And since we are on the topic of settings and, ghosts calling out, graveyards, cemeteries, I had another question for you. So, how do you craft a chilling atmosphere, whether emotional or physical, in your books without going too far for young readers?
This is a hard one, and I think this is one that I personally struggle with every single book, right? I think part of it is a gut instinct. Part of it is just knowing maybe what would be a little too much. My goal is to scare. I like to scare, right? But also not to traumatize. There's a difference, right? And then also, I have a very, very strong team of people at my publisher who are honest and who can help me find those boundaries. And for any aspiring writers as well, a good critique partner that you trust who can read your work as you're writing it and say, ooh, I think you might have gone a little too far on this one, or ooh, I think you can push it a little bit more and make it a little scarier. I think is a really, really great thing to have. We all need people around us to help us, and publishing is no different. I would not have these books without my critique partners and without my publishing team to kind of help me when things get a little bit difficult. The one thing I know going into every book, though, in terms of the horror element, is that I prefer more classic scares. I like, ghosts, and I like legends. If you can tell it around like a campfire tale, that's the type of vibe I like. I'm not probably ever going to be the author that puts gore into her books. I'm not like you know, but I don't have a problem with it in horror. But like for me, for my books, I stay away from a lot of gore and stick with the more classic scares. And that's really just kind of like I think a personal preference. And every author trying to write horror, or who is aiming at writing horror, kind of needs to think about where their boundaries are, who their target audience is, who are they making it for, and everything you put into that book, how is that, changing or helping the message you're sending?
Something I found really interesting and shocking is that my middle school creative writing elective, almost all the kids in the class wrote horror stories. What do you think it is about horror, the genre, that makes it so interesting to kids my age? And how do you think it helps us deal with our own fears or ideas or everyday life and emotions?
Ooh, that's so fun. First of all, I'm excited to hear that because we need more people even writing horror. I have a lot of thoughts on this one. Okay, so I think first of all, it's fun to write horror. It really is because it's very fast paced, right? So and I think it's also a lot of people are like me. They're like Halloween lovers. It's very fun at any time of year to kind of get into that spooky mindset and immerse yourself in a scary story that's really atmospheric and vibey, right?
Mhm.
But I think that the other part of your question is super important. And it's why are we drawn to that particularly? And I think for me, a lot of that is recognizing that there are a lot of things to be afraid of. I mean, just bottom line, I told you before we started recording that I moved to a farm and I'm a little bit afraid of the dark. And yet I write a lot of very dark scenes, things that take place in the dark. I put my characters in situations where the power goes out all the time and there's terrible storms, right? I think that when we write about these things and we choose to write about them, we're also in a lot of ways choosing to face them. When we don't talk about or think about things that we're afraid of, they just get bigger and bigger. They loom, right? As opposed to going ahead and kind of facing them in a way that we know we're safe, and we can't actually get hurt, which is what books and writing do for us. So, if you were to ask me, am I afraid of ghosts? Honestly, yeah, I wouldn't want to be haunted. I don't want a ghost in my house. How terrifying. That would be terrifying. But do I enjoy writing about them? Yeah, a little bit because it gives me the opportunity to maybe kind of like temper that fear a tiny bit. Does that make sense?
Does make sense. Continuing with the topic of settings and locations, as you mentioned earlier, it wasn't that long ago that you moved from Chicago to a 220-acre farm in downstate Illinois. And it sounds like the perfect location or storyline for a very spooky book. So, has your new home inspired your writing at all?
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. So first of all, I have my own office now, which is amazing. It looks out over the woods, which is beautiful. It's a very inspiring place to be in general, but
Mhm.
here is something I wasn't expecting about living in the country. Living in the country means that a lot of the times you can be driving on these little country roads, little gravel roads or dirt roads or whatever it is, and you will see a miniature graveyard. They're everywhere. There
Hmm,
are tiny family graveyards all over the place. Some of them have just a handful of headstones. Some of them will have, 10, 15 headstones. But that immediately makes me start thinking about the history of the property, the people who lived there before. And this definitely opening a lot of opportunities for me to write other books that aren't necessarily focused on just Chicago, because so many of my books really have taken place in either Chicago or the Chicagoland suburbs, because that's what I was accustomed to, right? That's where I lived for so long. But now being a little bit further downstate, you better bet I'm looking for opportunities to write about things down around here. And I think that there are going to be a lot of them.
definitely. I'm excited to see what you cook up in your new office while you're going to be writing some amazing
Thank
stories, I
you.
bet.
I think so. I hope so anyway.
So I read that you grew up on Nancy Drew, and for those who don't know, Nancy Drew is a series of mystery novels that began in the 1930s. Many of the stories themselves were turned into TV shows and even movies. So, from that, it sounds like you've always been a huge fan of mysteries. So, can you share what kind of impact these stories had on you growing up? And when you first knew you wanted to write your own scary or mysterious stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been drawn to mysteries, and I actually get asked this at schools a lot. And what I keep coming back around to is really just the way my brain works. We all think differently, we all focus differently, and we all read differently as well. And for me, I don't have the best attention span. And I've gotten to the point where I can acknowledge that. Like, it's just, I know this about me. I don't have a great attention span. The thing that's great about mysteries for someone like me is that regardless of what the pacing actually is in the book at every single moment, let's say you're in a part of the book that's a little bit slower paced, some books could potentially lose me when that happens, but mysteries generally don't, because you still have that overarching mystery that your brain can be kind of working on during those small moments, right? You've got clues that you're trying to piece together. You're probably, if you're like me, trying to figure it out faster than the characters. So mysteries are great if you have a little bit of trouble focusing on books and have not the best attention span. And if you're like me and you have trouble sitting through a full movie, anytime you sit down to watch a movie with people, then I think trying a mystery would be a great idea, because there's always something for your brain to be working on.
Absolutely, that is a great answer. My next question for you is about your publishing journey and how you actually ended up in the middle grade space. So, was it easy to break into middle grade publishing, or did you face any challenges along the way?
I faced a lot of challenges. I mean, a lot of the challenges that I ran into were specific, first of all, to me not even knowing exactly what my voice was or where I fit into publishing. I knew I wanted to write. I wanted to write children's books. I tried writing picture books first, believe it or not, because I thought that that was where I fit in, and it just wasn't. And so I got a lot of rejections. I'm sure you've heard this from other authors before. Publishing is rarely an overnight success story. You just have to, anytime something doesn't go your way in it, you have to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and say, what did I learn from that? And how can I try to do better next time? And when I finally decided that middle grade was really what I wanted to be writing, it was because I had the story idea. I had an agent by this point, but I had the story idea, and I knew it wasn't a picture book. I knew it wasn't a chapter book, and I knew it wasn't a young adult book either. It felt very uniquely middle grade. It had the vibe in my head of something like The Goonies, like one of those, epic movies where kids go out on bikes and solve a problem that no one else can solve, right? And so I took a stab at writing this book. It took me a long time to write. Again, it was a first. Sometimes you have to take your time with things like that, and you make a lot of mistakes along the way. I rewrote a lot of scenes and a lot of chapters based on critique partners. Um, and it went out on submission. And the first probably 8 or 9 responses that we got on that book were, "Hey, this is so nice, but no thank you." And that stings, right? It's a part of the process. It's a part of publishing. It takes a while to learn that it doesn't mean you're a crummy writer. or that your story is crummy. It just means that you haven't found the right fit for it yet. And by the time I got that yes, I think it had been on some, I don't even remember how long it had been on submission, but I was very, very, very grateful. And that first book deal was with Simon and Schuster, the division Aladdin, and that opened so many doors for me to be able to continue writing middle grade, which honestly, I see myself writing as long as I have readers. I really enjoy the age group a lot in writing for middle graders in general. So it wasn't easy to get here, but I'm really glad I did.
I'm glad you made it as well because your books are some of my personal favorites and the favorites of so many kids around the country and maybe even around the world. So, before we get into one of my final questions that I ask almost every author I talk to, I have a fun question for you. Do you actually believe in
Mhm.
ghosts? And what do you actually believe in ghosts? And what would you do if you kind of came face to face with a ghost?
Okay, I do. I do believe in ghosts. And here's the thing. All of the places in my books are places that I have been and actually researched in person, which means I spend a lot of time creeping and lurking around graveyards and haunted locations and things like that. And what when you go into something like that is that everywhere that has a reputation for being haunted, there's a reason for that, right? Something happened there in its history, something dark, something eerie that puts people on edge. That's how ghost stories begin, right? But sometimes when you're in these places, and yes, I do have a very active imagination, but sometimes things do happen. You may see something, you may hear something, and it can be very hard to explain in a traditional way. So I've had a lot of experiences where I have felt very on edge, had a very specific feeling, or seen something or felt something that to me seemed a little bit paranormal in nature. Haven't seen what I would consider to be a classic ghost in front of me. I don't think I would react well to that. I think I would be so afraid. If my house, I love my new house, but if it was haunted, I'd probably have to sell it. I'm not as brave as my characters at all. My characters are like, let's face this head on. We're going to end this haunting. Meanwhile, I'd be like, we need to call a real estate agent. Um, but yeah, I do. I do. And I'm also the kind of person that just likes to have an open mind about things. Unless, someone proves to me that there are no ghosts, which would be very hard to do. I'm probably going to keep my mind open about the existence of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I believe in ghosts necessarily. I think it's definitely possible, and I'm gonna keep my eyes out. And speaking of keeping my eyes out, I'm keeping my eyes out for new books of yours that are going to be released. So I hear you have two more books scheduled to release in the near future. So without giving away any spoilers, can you tell us about them? Give a sneak peek into your upcoming novels?
I can. So I have two very different books coming out in the next year. So the first one that we have coming is actually the sequel to The Mystery of Locked Rooms. It is The House with No Keys. Ooh, I know. I'm so excited about this book. So The House with No Keys takes place shortly after The Mystery of Locked Rooms. The main characters, the Delta, Sarah, West, and Hannah, are all back again. I don't want to I have to be careful how I describe what's happening so I don't give away anything from the ending of the first one. But in the second one, they are going to be tackling a very different escape house. They get a very cryptic message from someone named C.K. Goodson, who invites them to come try the newest, best escape house imaginable. And for a variety of personal reasons, they feel like they need to do this, even though they don't really want to. And they go to this house on opening day. There's also a reward involved, so heads up on that one. And very quickly discover that it's going to be extremely challenging. It's a very high tech house, unlike the house in The Mystery of Locked Rooms. It's very rudimentary, right, and dark, and not a lot of technology. And they also discover, unfortunately, rather quickly, that not everyone plays fair,
Mhm.
and the stakes are really, really high. So I had a blast writing The House with No Keys. That is coming in September, on September 30th. So that is available for pre-order now. I know. I'm so excited to be able to continue writing those characters. They're really special to me. They're fun. I don't know. Have you ever read a book where you wish the characters were real people?
Yeah,
Like I
definitely.
wish the Deltas were real people. I think they would be cool. And then the other book I have coming out is coming in January, so not that much further. And it's a scary one. It is called X Marks the Haunt. If you haven't seen the cover for this, you have to look it up. It is incredible. The illustrator, Marcella Bolivar, is amazing. And this book actually features Graceland Cemetery, which you asked me about graveyards and what I like about them. Graceland is my favorite one anywhere. It is in Chicago. It's so filled with history and people and stories and architecture. And to write the book, I actually shadowed there for 4 months
Ooh,
to learn the inner workings of a graveyard. So, most people, if you were to ask them, what does someone who works in a graveyard do? That's a hard question to answer, right? Other than dig graves, we don't really understand what they do, but what they do is so much more than that. It is a lot of genealogy, tracking down long lost family members for people. It's a lot of individual little mystery solving, protection of the stories, the history, the architecture. It was an incredible journey learning about the graveyard and how it works and the people who are so passionate about preserving it. And it was very fun to write. And I will say, for fans of my spooky books, it is definitely, I think, the scariest thing I've ever written. So if you like the scares and you like my ghostly stuff, I think you're really going to like X Marks the Haunt. Yeah. It's
I'm
going to be
s-
good fun.
I'm so excited, and I'm also curious to know your answer to my final question of the interview. Makes me sad because I love talking with you, but I'm also really curious to know what your thoughts are and who your, I guess, most people who've watched the channel know this question, so who your character would be. So if you could be or meet any literary character, it could be your favorite author or your favorite character in a book, who would it be or and why?
Oh my goodness. So okay, so did you say I could pick an author or they have to be a literary
It
character?
could be either an author or a book character.
Okay, I have so many, but one of my very favorite books of all time is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I really would love to be able to sit down with Daphne and talk to her about that book because it was one that okay, I have two. So I'm going to have to bend the rules a tiny bit here, just a tiny bit.
Okay.
So I would love to talk to Daphne about Rebecca and tell her how wonderful I think her book was, first of all, right? But then also, in terms of characters that I think are resilient and incredible, the main character from Where the Red Fern Grows. So I read this when I was in about fourth grade. And I don't want anyone to get PTSD from me like saying the name of this book because it elicits big feelings in people. Either they love it or they're like, oh, that's the saddest thing I've ever read in my life. But the main character in that book lived such a different lifestyle than me, right? Lived in the Ozarks. He wanted these, hunting dogs. All of these, I mean, he was saving up forever to get these dogs. And I would love to talk to that character just a little bit. For one, to explain to him how much his story like meant to me as a kid, all of the things that like he encountered and overcame, right? I think that's such an amazing thing. And the author as well, Wilson Rawls, incredible. That story was the first time I ever remember reading a book and having every emotion all in the course of those pages. That is almost like a magical power, right? It is a gift to be able to write something like that that makes people feel everything so deeply, whether it be happiness or sadness or even anger. So I would have to put those authors and that character in my list and say, just let me talk to them a little bit, hang out with them, pick their brain a little bit, because they were all pretty influential on me when I was a kid.
It's an amazing answer, a super unique answer as well. And, I knew this was going to be an amazing talk, and I knew you were going to give some amazing answers to my questions. And I'm just so glad you could join me today, Lindsay. Your answers were thoughtful,
Oh, thank you.
and I'm so grateful for you and the books that you write and just for spending time with me and, chatting up about books.
I feel the same way. Thank you so much for hosting me. We need more of you out there because not only are you an ambassador for books and you're always encouraging young people to read and keep reading, but you're also an ambassador of kindness. And that's a message that I think we need to spread as often and as far as we can. So I really appreciate that about you. And I am so glad that I had a chance to chat with you today. And anytime Please come back. I'd be happy to talk again. And keep your eyes open for House with No Keys and X Marks the Haunt. I think you're going to love them both, just in very different ways.
I can't wait. So, everybody, thank you so much for watching. This is my interview with New York Times bestselling author Lindsay Currie. Check out her books, they're absolutely phenomenal. So, until next time, keep reading. And by reading, of course, I mean read Lindsay Currie's books. You're going to love them. You're going to cherish them. You're going to hold them. You're going to read them and be like, this is amazing. That's how I felt personally. So, keep reading, stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.